Genesis, chapter number 5. And you can see on the top of your study sheet, the Bible study sheet, we're going to look at the line of Seth this evening. Going to do a little bit of review, and then we'll get into these verses of chapter number 5 of Genesis. The Lord created Adam from the dust of the ground and made from man woman, whom we know later to be called Eve. Their first child, Adam and Eve's first child, was a boy named Cain, and their second child was a boy named Abel. Abel was righteous, Cain was unrighteous. Cain refused to get right with God after God gave him another opportunity. And one day as Cain and Abel were out in the field together, something took place. Whether it was premeditated or not, we're not told exactly, but Cain rose up and slew Abel. Cain then left the presence of the Lord, dwelt in the land of Nod. Cain married, they bore a child, a son whom they named Enoch. Cain, most likely out of the goal of protecting his family, he built a city, and he named this city after this first child, Enoch. The line of Cain, largely but not entirely, was an unrighteous line. Individuals who went on living without God in their life. The scriptures then tell us of Adam and Eve bearing another child, a son whose name was Seth. The name Seth means appointed or substitute. And Eve believed that this child they bore was the substitute for Abel, and the substitute seed for Abel. We assume Seth was married, though we're not told of her name, let alone her at all. They had a son whose name was Enos. It was at this time in the history of mankind that the lineage of Seth, that this family was largely but not entirely righteous, and they were called and distinguished as a people who loved and served the Lord. So now we come to chapter number 5 of Genesis, and largely, though not entirely, this chapter, it records the lineage of Seth. As we learned in last week's Bible study, the lineage of Seth is important. Through the lineage of Seth, the Messiah would come. We know previous to Seth being born that God had told Adam and Eve, he had told Satan, Adam and Eve knew, that through the seed of woman would come this deliverer, this one who would bruise Satan's head. Then Seth was born. Then we know after Jesus was born, we have the lineage of Jesus, which includes Seth. And so this lineage was important because this is the one through whom the Messiah would come. Okay, let's look at Genesis chapter number 5. How many of you already looked at the chart on the right side? Okay, a couple curious people. Don't look over there yet if you're not curious. Okay, let's go to chapter 5 of Genesis, and it says this in the beginning. This is the book of the generations of Adam. Generations, the first statement on your sheet is this. Generations in the Bible speak of the history and lineage of a person. So when we read of the book of the generations of Adam, what we're reading is the history of Adam. We're learning about his family, his history, his genealogy. I want you to take your Bible, go to Genesis chapter 6. Let's read of another instance of generations. Genesis chapter 6, look at verses 9 and 10. These are the generations of Noah. Noah was a just man, perfect in his generations, and Noah walked with God. And Noah begat 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. So here we have the lineage, the history, the family of Noah. Another example, if you look on your lesson sheet, Genesis chapter 11, verse 27, we have another example of generations found in the Bible. Now these are the generations of Terah. This is the family, the lineage of Terah. Terah begat Abram, Nahor, and Haran begat Lot. There's also mention in the Bible of a single generation. So you have the generations of Adam, you have the generations of Noah, you have the generations of Terah. Then we have mentioned in the Bible a single generation. Go to Genesis chapter 7. Genesis chapter 7, notice verse 1. And the Lord said unto Noah, Come thou and all thy house into the ark, for thee have I seen righteous before me in this generation. So here we have a single generation. Previous, we have several groups of people, several different ages, if you will. Here we have just one. Now there's been a lot of discussion about how long a generation is. As time progresses, generations actually become shorter and shorter in the minds of people. What I mean by this has nothing to do with length of life, but what is considered to be a generation. Let me give you the next statement. In the Bible times, a generation was considered to be longer than it is today. In our modern day, a generation is typically considered to be around 20 years, and some even will go down to 15 years. I don't have this on your lesson sheet because I didn't have space, but let me give to you, in our country, the generations that from the beginning of the 1900s to this point. Prior to that, there doesn't seem to be necessarily divisions, names given to generations previous to that. 1901 to 1927 is the greatest generation. Some of us tonight would beg to differ than that. But 1928 to 1945 is a silent generation. 1946 to 1964, baby boom generation. 1965 to 1980, Generation X. Millennial generation, or Generation Y, 1981-1996. Generation Z is 1997 to 2010. Generation Alpha, 2011 to 2024. And Generation Beta is from 2025 to 2039. Now, if you were to be able to look at that list that I just gave you, those generations beginning with 1900, over the course of that time, just within 126 years, well, 139 years, but it shrunk from just 26 years to the latest generation being 14 years. And this is just in a span of 139 years. So that's a great variation between 139 years ago and today. When we read of a generation in the Scripture, it's not necessarily a specific time frame, though it does speak of a specific group of people within time. In the New Testament, Jesus spoke of when Jesus would often speak of a generation, and when he did that, he was often speaking about the people who were living there. So, like if I said, well, this generation today, they don't seem to follow God like they should. Somebody today would say, well, is that generation the greatest generation? That's the silent generation? Is that Gen Z? Who is that? Well, when Jesus said that, or when I say that, something like that, what it's talking about is just this generation, those people who are living today. I gave an example of this. Matthew 12, verse 41. The men of Nineveh shall rise in judgment with this generation. Was Jesus just talking about a group of people within a 25-year span, within those who lived in that area? No, he's talking about everybody that was living, and more specifically in this context, a specific place. But he said, the men of Nineveh shall rise in judgment with this generation and shall condemn it. Now, another instance of generations in the Bible, we find the history not of people, but of things. Notice Genesis 2:4. These are the generations of the heavens and the earth. This isn't the lineage, the biological lineage of the heavens and the earth. This is the history of their creation. Okay, so with that, let's move on to our next point, which speaks of Adam. This is the book of the generations of Adam. Now, if you look back at chapter number 4, the last person mentioned in the Genesis account is Enos. Do you see that back in verse 26? Chapter 5 is Adam, the first man. Enos is Adam's grandson. So in verse 26 of chapter 4, we have Enos. We come into chapter number 5, and in our minds we think, well, it's going to continue on. It's going to go to Enos' son, and then his grandson, and so forth. But we don't have that in the Bible record. We have the Lord going back to Adam after mentioning Adam's grandson. Why in chapter 5 does the Lord revert back to Adam and speak of his generations? Well, let's look at these verses, and I think we can come to a sound conclusion. This is the book of the generations of Adam. In the day that God created man, in the likeness of God made he him. Male and female created he them, and blessed them, and called their name Adam, in the day when they were created. And Adam lived 130 years, and begat a son in his own likeness, after his image, and called his name Seth. And the days of Adam after he had begotten Seth were 800 years, and he begat sons and daughters, and all the days that Adam lived were 930 years, and he died. Now, the thing that I want you to pay attention to in this passage is it tells first of Adam being made in the likeness of God. Then it says Adam lived 130 years. Verse 3, notice it. Adam lived 130 years and begat a son in his own likeness. Do you see that? Adam was created in the likeness of God. In verse 3, Adam, when he was 130, he begat a son in his likeness. Notice at the end of verse number 5, what happened to Adam? He died. So we have here in the first 5 verses of Genesis chapter number 5 something very interesting. God makes sure that we understand Adam was made perfect. He made a choice, became a sinner, and everyone born after Adam bore not the image of God, his exact likeness, as Adam was, but they bore the likeness of Adam. I hope I said that correctly. Okay, let me give you a couple statements here, and maybe I'll say it again. So Adam bore a child after his likeness, after his image. Go back to chapter number 1. Go back to chapter 1 of Genesis and look at verse 26. Keep your place here in chapter 5. Chapter 1, verse 26. And God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness. So in this verse, we find that Adam was made in the likeness of the divine image. This does not, when God said we're going to make Adam after our likeness, he's not talking physically. God is a spirit. Jesus was not yet incarnate. God is a spirit, and man is not a spirit only. So when God said, let us make man after our image, he's not just speaking of Adam's creation physically. The next statement is this: to be made in the likeness of the image of God is for the soul and spirit to have been formed after the nature and perfections of God. That's how Adam was formed. Before Adam and Eve sinned, they were perfect. After Adam and Eve sinned, they were not perfect. They had become sinners. Now you can turn back to chapter number 5, and we're told that the child that Adam bore in this point in his life was not in the likeness of the divine image, but in the likeness of Adam. When Adam and Eve gave birth to Seth, Adam and Eve's likeness did not entirely bear the image and likeness of God. They had become sinners. They had not lost all resemblances, and they had not lost all abilities, but they had become sinners, and their relationship was greatly broken in their lives upon this earth. So when Seth was born, he was not born in the likeness of perfect Adam. He was born in the likeness of sinful Adam. Notice what the Bible states, Romans chapter 5. Wherefore, as by one man sin entered into the world, and death by sin, so death passed upon all men, for that all have sinned. So Adam's nature passed upon all men, for all men have come from the lineage of Adam. All of us are mankind. Our kind is man, who is Adam. All of us are Adam kind. Well, what kind was Adam when he bore these? Sinners. He was a sinner, fallen short of the glory of God. And I believe that the Lord pointed out this record to us at this point in Genesis because the rest of the chapter we're going to read of the lineage of Seth, through whom the Messiah would come, but Seth would bear the likeness of Adam. And these that were given in the lineage, all of them save Enoch, died. And so we have a very understandable reason why they died. All of them were born sinners and died physically. They experienced the separation of the body from soul and spirit. Each of them, while we're not specifically told that their salvation, their faith in the Messiah, we understand and realize that each of them did have faith in the Messiah. Sinners who believe in the Messiah, sinners who are saved from their sin, while they will experience physical death, separation of body and soul from spirit, if the Lord tarries, obviously, they will not experience spiritual death, nor the culmination of death, the second death, which is body, soul, and spirit in eternal conscious torment. Now, there's a lot there that I just gave you in those last 3 or 4 minutes. But what I want us to understand is we're going through the lineage of Seth. These are righteous people, yet they are sinners. And part of them being sinners is that they're going to experience physical death. But they certainly won't, since they're having faith in the Messiah, they won't ever experience spiritual death or the culmination of death, the second death. Okay, let's move to our next point, which will get us close to the chart. From verse 6 until the end of the chapter, we're given the lineage of Seth, and only one male child from each generation is specifically named except for Noah. These are the golden boys. No, that's not what they are. These are the lineage that God wanted us to have. Now, there are many men within this record in which had sons and daughters in addition to this son. But the only one within this list that's the sons are given is Noah. So let's look at a few of these here. Verse 6, and Seth lived 105 years and begat Enos, and Seth lived after he begat Enos 807 years and begat sons and daughters. There we have an instance of that. And all the days of Seth were 912 years, and he died. Righteous? Yes. Did he experience physical death? Yes. Will he experience the second death? No. And Enos lived 90 years and begat Canaan. And Enos lived after he begat Canaan 815 years and begat sons and daughters. Another example of other children. And all the days of Enos were 905 years, and he died. And we can go on. Let's look at the illustration I put on your sheet this evening. If you look, we have Adam, and then his son Seth. Then we have Enos. We have all these individuals that are mentioned in chapter number 5. And then Canaan, and then Mahalalel, Jared, Enoch, Methuselah, Lamech, and Noah. Now, if you notice 3/4 of the way on the right side, you see where the flood is. There's several things that we could make note of in this illustration, but I want to point out a couple things. First of all, the years on either side of these bars on this illustration, these are the years from creation. So don't necessarily think those in any other terms. Now, one of the other things that's worthy to mention is that there are 9 generations given in this passage in Genesis chapter 5. And the average lifespan of this line of Seth, excluding Enoch, it's 910 years. So if you add them all up, except for Enoch, and you divide them by however many you got, that's 910 years. Now we could say a lot about somebody living 910 years. There's a lot of discussion we could have concerning that many years. Did they continue to learn through all 910 years? At what point did they leave bearing children? How many children could they have had? The aging process. A lot of questions. Another worthy thing to mention is the fact that Adam and Noah almost lived at the same time. Sometimes when we read through Scripture, we put them in two totally different time periods, but that's simply not the case. If you look at Adam, we find that he died 930 years after creation, and Noah came into existence, according to this chart, 1,056 years after creation. There have been some charts that I've seen that put it even closer, like 50 years, 54 years, I think I've seen one. Now, the next statement on your lesson sheet is, I think I have it on here, maybe I don't, but it's this: Seth lived at the same time as Noah. This one that we read of last week, Seth, he lived to see the last man mentioned, at least the father mentioned, in Genesis chapter 5. Seth was able to talk with Noah. That's absolutely amazing. Each of these generations were taught what God taught Adam and Eve. God told them, revealed to them, that a Messiah would come through the seed of woman. Each one of these generations thought maybe this generation is it. They thought, this is the one. This is going to be the generation that the seed of woman, the promised one, the Messiah, would come. We're told within Jewish ancestry that every Jewish woman who was married, she hoped that she would be the one through whom the Messiah would come. And that isn't just modern. This dates back to the beginning of mankind. Each of these generations, they were hoping maybe this is when the promised Messiah would come. Now, with that in mind, think of this. The average lifespan was at 910 years. That's a lot of hoping. These folks hoped for years and years and years that the Messiah would come. Okay, the time span from Adam to the flood was 1,656 years. Now, in the midst of this listing, we're told that Enoch walked with the Lord. The mention of Enoch walking with God is a reminder that this is a righteous line of Seth through whom would come the Messiah. Notice verse 22. And Enoch walked with God after he begat Methuselah 300 years and begat sons and daughters. He taught those sons and daughters about the Lord. Okay, let's move to our final point, and that is Noah. We're given the names of the three sons of Noah, and I want to end our study tonight upon Noah. Noah was Seth's six-time great grandson. Great, 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 great grandson. Okay, look at verse 29. And he called his name Noah. This is Lamech. Lamech called his name Noah, saying, This same shall comfort us concerning our work and toil of our hands, because of the ground which the Lord hath cursed. So Noah's father Lamech called one of his sons Noah. The name Noah means rest. Now think of Lamech when he named him Noah. He did not know what Noah would do. You and I tonight, we know who Noah is and what Noah did. He built the ark and he preserved the human race. Lamech was familiar with the Lord having cursed the ground because of man's sin. Lamech wasn't familiar with what Noah would do, but he was familiar with what God had done because of the curse of sin. So the next statement is this: Lamech knew the truth of the curse of sin and personally believed in the Messiah who would bring comfort, peace, and rest. Certainly Lamech didn't know everything that was going to transpire in Noah's life. He thought maybe this would be the one who would bring the promised Messiah, who would bring rest. Well, wouldn't you know it that Noah's wife didn't bear the Christ child, but Noah's ark is a type of salvation. So Lamech was familiar with the toils of life as a sinner and had hope in the deliverer. It's an absolute amazing group of men. Now this is going to conclude our study for tonight, and then next week we're going to study more about Noah. Okay, let's take if you got your memory verse sheet,